the more I hear about this case, the more it feels like Scott Peterson actually has a shot at a retrial, which just seems insane to me. But since you're a prosecutor and you're from California, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I will try to make the case on his behalf, okay? Because it's more interesting if we have both sides. So he's just been given wide access to a whole new host of discovery that he says he was entitled to in this case, which my understanding is the judge had earlier said, you're not getting this. Go back to prison. Goodbye. But now he is getting access to a bunch of new evidence that would support allegedly this whole theory that what happened on the day Laci Peterson went missing and was murdered was not that Scott Peterson killed her and then disposed of her body and that of their unborn son. It was that she witnessed a burglary across the street from where they lived. She either tried to stop it, which is what Scott Peterson says he believes, or she was just an eyewitness and therefore became a target. They abducted her. They killed her. They then drove around with her body for some sort of period. And then when the police made clear that Scott Peterson was believed to have been at this harbor, this marina, on the day that Laci went missing, they thought, aha, this is our chance. We're going to dump the body over there so that he will be blamed for this crime. And it does appear like this judge has at least opened up discovery again for him to start probing that theory more meaningfully. Is that about where things stand?
Yeah, that's about where things stand. I mean, it's utterly absurd. But yeah, don't you hate it when women who are 7.5 months pregnant go charging in to stop burglaries, and then burglars who are there to steal drive around for days and days with a dead body in their car of somebody that they killed just because, apparently. And then they get really smart at that point and decide that they're going to drive to probably a marina that will have more law enforcement witnesses and everybody else because the attention given this case back in the day. And they're going to take the body out and go to pretty much the exact same place that Scott Peterson was fishing, according to him, and dump the body. Yeah, it happens all the time. You know, I mean,
well,
give them a new trial.
And not to help you out because, yeah, I'm supposed to be taking the other side. But the other piece of that story that's just so nonsensical is if that's what they wanted to frame him, why would they weigh down the body in the ocean with a bunch of anchors? Why wouldn't they just throw the body on the shore or go out in the middle of the night and dump it overboard so it would float back in?
Because burglars go and make fake anchors with cement that they purchase all the time. That's why. I mean, anybody knows that, Megyn. It's like, look, this is the latest case in a few of these that are going on right now, where it's kind of like, you know, a couple of decades have gone by and everybody has forgotten the overwhelming evidence against Scott Peterson. And this guy, look, this is a domestic violence murder, and I don't have to say alleged because the guy is convicted right now of it. So, you know, everybody forgets Amber Frey and all of the stuff regarding the affair and the fact that he dyed his hair and had $15,000 and was down in San Diego and looked like he was going to flee to Mexico. It's like we get these cases. Menendez brothers is another one right now where everybody forgets. And then all of a sudden, hey, the LA Innocence Project is on there, which is a misnomer if there's ever been one.
Tell us about that.
I mean, look, they did some really good work back in the day when DNA became ubiquitous in when CODIS went online and every state joined it. And right when they were using modern co-filer and profiler DNA kits, which are way easier than the old RFLP to understand. That's the gel, that they used to inject. So they found some people that were wrongfully convicted, and that happens in our system. I sit on a board with Purdue University where that's our sole task is trying to identify people who are wrongfully convicted. But since that initial flurry of kind of glory, if you call it that, where they're doing good work, finding people that were wrongfully convicted, it seems like they've really settled more into stuff like this, high profile stuff that gets a lot of headlines. And then as soon as you all your viewers have to do is just read the Wikipedia on this case. The California Supreme Court affirmed this conviction 7-0. They reversed the death part because of there were some irregularities during jury selection, but they affirmed his conviction. And another term that we keep hearing, there's a Newsweek article on this, and the defense alleges it was circumstantial evidence. And we've all heard that. We've seen that in TV shows, right? Like you see Starsky and, I'm going to date myself here, Starsky and Hutch or Cagney and Lacey.
I know the reference.
Whoever the cops are today, and we have this concept, and it's a myth, that circumstantial evidence, quote unquote, is somehow inadmissible or bad evidence. And that's exactly the way Newsweek wrote their article on this that I read this morning. Case based on circumstantial evidence, according to LA Innocence Project. It's like every single domestic violence murder, guys, in America and in the world throughout history involves some degree of circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence just means a witness comes into court and they say they saw something. Circumstantial evidence is pretty much everything else. I mean, circumstantial evidence, it's like, this guy had every poker tell that you could ever want during this investigation, including refusing at one point to communicate with her family, refusing to speak to the police anymore. He told his like paramour, mistress, whatever we want to call Amber Frey, that Lacey was dead when she was very much alive. He said that he was a widower. He bought this boat 2 weeks before she disappeared. He bought cement, which is consistent with the way her body was found. Her body was heavily decomposed, and they believe that that the coroner testified at the time that it was consistent with several anchors holding her down. There's so much overwhelming evidence here, and circumstantial evidence is that good old-fashioned common sense stuff, like somebody running away from a crime scene, somebody in possession of stolen property from a recent burglary that happened down the street from them. Like, circumstantial evidence is the bread and butter of every domestic violence murder case in the history of justice. And that really is the right word for it, is justice, like holding people accountable for what they did. The evidence against this guy is laughably overwhelming. And they come in, they get the headlines, LA Innocence Project, and then everybody forgets all that stuff. And it's like, ooh, there was a van down the street with a mattress in it. And essentially that's what the current legal action is about. They want to test a mattress that was found in some burnout van somewhere in the neighborhood of where Lacey Peterson lived. Okay, so if they get in there and I can already tell you what the argument is.
This is the mattress, which they say has blood on it, but that the initial test suggested maybe it was blood. Then the second test done by the officials suggested it was inconclusive, not clear whether it's blood or rust. Go ahead. Sorry, Matt.
Right. What they're going to, if they get that thing, they're going to swab it. And modern genetic and DNA testing is so sensitive. I can virtually guarantee you will find unknown male DNA on that mattress. And the next thing that the Innocence Project is going to do is they're going to say, aha, that's the DNA for the real killer, and it doesn't match Scott Peterson. But without a link to Lacey Peterson, it is literally meaningless. And look, we see that all the time in a lot of cases. Like I said, there are cases where DNA has legitimately freed people that didn't do it. And thank goodness for that. And that's the way we want the system to work. And forensic technology is unbiased, and thank goodness, right? But there's also a lot of these cases, Megyn, and this is something that drives me crazy, where you'll have something that happened, maybe say a rape murder in the 1980. Okay, and somebody will have been convicted of rape murder. The jury, who, in my experience, and I've done a lot of capital case litigation, I've done a lot of cases like this, which are bifurcated murder trials. The juries take their task very seriously. The judges tend to be the most experienced and the best. The detectives tend to be the most experienced and the best. And it's imperfect, but everybody really wants to do their job. So then a couple of decades later, and say it's a homeless drifter, okay, and that guy is convicted, and maybe he's got some sex offenses in his past. And the way it works over and over again is he'll say, hey, it was consensual sex. I understand that she's a stockbroker and I was living in a tent, but trust me, we really had a spark. And boy, did we hit it off. And so that's why my sperm was found all over the place. but somebody else came along later and killed her. And that will be the absurd, ridiculous defense that they will run, and the jury will reject it properly, and he'll get convicted. And then what happens is that, the DNA comes back like 20 years later or 30 years later, and they'll test the scrapings under her fingernails, or they'll test some object that's found at the crime scene. And, if she patted a little boy on the head that day, or if she shook hands with her mailman or something, you can discover unknown male DNA that has no link whatsoever to the actual murder. But the standard on appeal is, could a reasonable jury have found differently? Essentially, could they have come to a different result based on that new evidence? And the answer under those circumstances is, yeah, if they didn't consider that, maybe so. So that's the standard for reversal on appeal. So the case comes back for a retrial, and Aunt Millie, who worked in the evidence room, put it in the wrong box, or the evidence got washed away in the Great Flood of '82, and they can't redo it, or the critical witnesses have died. The investigator necessary to lay the foundation for that evidence has passed away. Like you can have this entire host of problems that can afflict a case like that 30 years later. So they can't retry it. And then what happens is you got people like Barry Scheck in front of the cameras going, another innocent man exonerated, which is the term they love, exonerated from DNA evidence, when they weren't exonerated at all. They were granted a new trial, and the prosecution couldn't proceed. And then that guy goes out, and this has happened over and over and over again in America, because we know sex offenders keep doing it again. So they'll get out, they'll sue the county, or they'll get settlements for a couple $1 million, and then they get caught for doing it again. And nobody wants to talk about those. And it drives me insane.
Scott Peterson is a relatively young man. I mean, if he were to get out, I think he would pose a danger to other women and other people. Obviously, it would take the most stone cold sociopath in America to murder one's 8-month pregnant wife and one's unborn child with your bare hands, and then dump them in the ocean like they were trash while you're talking to your lover with these nonsense claims, while you're actually, we actually have this queued up because it's just so amazing, while you're actually at the vigil for your missing wife and child, talking to your lover. In Amber Frey's defense here, she did not know he was married. And at this point, the reason it's on tape is because when she saw his picture all over the news, she called the cops to say, holy cow, I'm dating your suspect. And so she got him on tape, and he's claiming he's in Paris on New Year's Eve while Lacey's still missing. They haven't found the body. The vigil's there, the people with the candles. He's on camera like, oh, poor husband. And he's talking to the lover about the fake Paris fireworks. Here it is.
Amber, it's New Year's here. Are you there?
Yes. Are you having a good time?
I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal.
Unreal is exactly the word. Now, Matt, I want to ask you a couple things. Okay, so first of all, you meant I understand there is a distinction between the Innocence Project and the LA Innocence Project. I don't know about this LA Innocence Project because in my experience, the bar is a little high for the Innocence Project to take on your case. I don't know about LA Innocence. I've seen this. There's like a cleavage there in the reporting about these two. Maybe they have a lower standard. For those of us holding our breath for the past several months as we came up to this election, we can finally exhale. Work can at last be done on the major issues this country's facing, one of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, we're broke, and that debt is a house of cards for our nation that cannot be quickly dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You might want to diversify your savings. This is why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, out of our president's control. So it can be important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit. Plus, right now, you will receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle coin for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.